everybody, this is Tim W. Leathertachi 1996, and for our third episode of Godzilla FX, this week we have King Kong vs. Godzilla from the year 1962. Now, this movie is a huge improvement over Godzilla Raids Again. I just got done watching this movie like three hours ago, actually, or I finished watching it. I fell asleep and then paused where I left off yesterday and then continued watching it when I woke up today. But I will say right now that this movie is a huge improvement over Godzilla Raids Again. Like, the effects in this movie are a definite large improvement over the movie before this. Now, I know this series is not about critiquing posters, but I always love showing off the poster because if you don't have posters of any of your favorite films, then you're not a fan of the movies. I mean, you don't always have to get posters to be a fan of the films, I understand that, but sometimes it's always cool to get the poster because it shows how much you appreciate the movie or the franchise, or the movie franchise you're a fan of. Now, the funny thing about this poster is, like, look at Godzilla's arm off to the left. I mean, his arm, it would have been cooler if that arm was grabbing Kong's arm instead of lean back. That just looks weird. Oh, and there's this fun fact about this movie. This movie was actually supposed to be Godzilla versus Frankenstein, where they were supposed to have a kaiju-sized Frankenstein monster fighting Godzilla, but I can't remember the reason why, but Toho scrapped the idea of Frankenstein's monster and they switched it to King Kong. And in the movie, if you notice in the poster, Kong's grabbing electrical towers. Well, that's because in the movie they say electricity makes him stronger, which is a huge indication that he was originally supposed to be Frankenstein. Now, and those of you who have not seen this movie yet, and because I know there's some of you out there who have not actually seen this movie, yes, that is what Kong's face looks like in this movie. And on the poster, his body kind of looks like anybody seen Mighty Peking Man? You know, the Hong Kong King Kong, from like 1977 or 78. I can't remember the year that movie came out. But I tried to get the Japanese poster, but I couldn't because all the Japanese posters were tiny on Google Images. So this was the biggest poster I was actually able to get. Now, like I said, this is one of my first favorite Godzilla films here. This is my number 7 on my list. So here we go. And now here we got the first screenshot of the film. This is the Blu-ray screenshots that I found. These are the best ones that I get, so here we go. Now, here we go, starting off with Godzilla's design. Now, the one piece of effects work that I really got to point out is his neck and his bottom jaw, the way it looks, reminds me a lot of Gorgo, and if any of you guys don't know who Gorgo is basically the British the British Godzilla from the year 1967. And if you look at Godzilla's neck, it's very straight. Like, usually Godzilla's neck is straight, but it's, I don't know, the neck and bottom jaw looks very Gorgo-ish, kinda. And his eye looks like he's looking up, even though he's supposed to be looking right in front of him. So, other than that, the design is very much on a par with the first movie, 2 movies prior to this, where it doesn't look like the skinny little gecko from the skinny little lizard from Raids Again. His design looks a lot more dinosaur-like it was 2 movies prior. And already here we get a special effects work of his backplates glowing right before he shoots his atomic breath. Now, I think the way they did this was they scratched the film every few frames or so to make it look like his backplates are glowing. So I will be talking about his atomic breath here in a little bit, and this is at the beginning of the movie where he destroys an army base when he comes out of a block of ice. Now, the block of ice is really well done, but when he comes ashore and he attacks an army base, the tanks are like a 50-50. Like, some of them look like actual tanks sitting there, and then sometimes they look too much like little remote control tanks. So the tanks are 50-50, but Godzilla destroying the miniature set for the army base was really well done, actually. Like I said, the special effects in this film are just the way the movie starts is like you get the first 10 minutes and you can already tell it's a huge improvement over Raids Again. Like the camera speed is done perfectly, like the first film. And here in this movie, we get Godzilla's trademark roar, the roar that everybody knows and loves. Now, this is the debut of that roar. I mean, I know in the first couple movies they kind of did that roar, but this is the movie where the debut of the mighty screeching roar that everyone knows and loves. And his skin is very like I said, this suit is a lot reminiscent of the first film. So yeah, that's only I'm getting the con effects out of the way here just to start getting the pros. The movie's chock full of pros. This shot here, oh my god, this monster. Now, this was right before Kong shows up, and this is like in the middle of the movie. And actually, there's another monster right before the giant octopus. Before I talk about Uodako here, and that's the literal thing's name is Uodako. It's Oodako. I don't know if that's Toho's official name or that's a fan name for it, but before this monster, I couldn't get a picture of this third one. But there's this giant lizard that looks like about the size of a cat of a large catfish or whatever, and it's this little prop that squeaks, and one of the main characters has it by the tail, and he throws it around before another character shoots the poor thing. It's an odd piece of effects work, but it actually works. But this creature here, the giant octopus, they used a real octopus for this scene, and they just green screened it to look big. Now, back in this time period, there was always the using real animals and green screening the crap out of them to make them look giant. And this movie did a really good job on doing this. Like, they used apparently 3 octopi for this scene, for this one scene, but it works really well. Now, there is some stop motion in this movie and a little tribute to the original King Kong. There was a couple of there was like one stop motion bit of a tentacle grabbing one of the natives on Faroe Island here and throwing him, and then they have like tentacle puppets that they have. So it's a blend of like real animal stop motion and puppets, like all 3 practical effects. But the fact that they used a real octopus for this scene is amazing. I mean, it really adds to the realism of the movie. And the thing makes these disgusting wet sounds every time it moves, and it's like, oh my god. For the longest time, I thought this thing was a puppet, but there is a video on YouTube, I can't remember who posted it actually, but there is a test screening on YouTube of the fact that they used a real octopus for this movie. So, to the fact that Toho dipped their hands into using a real animal and green screening it to make it look big, the fact that they dipped their hands in that tidbit is really cool. But there is one con about this. They used a large octopus puppet, and there's a shot when Kong fights it and the head looks like a plastic bag at one point. That's another con about the special effects. The octopus puppet, it's like a hit or miss, and then it gets to the point where the head looks like a plastic bag before Kong throws it back on the ground. Oh, and speaking of Kong, here he is. Okay, now you see where the chest is? They could have, yeah, like I said in the poster, that's what his face really looks like. His chest is the one thing that they could have just made the chest like Peking Man-ish if they would have just made it all hair, you know, and made it look like Peking Man before Peking Man. Then it wouldn't look so odd. Like the chest just looks like too old style gorilla. And what's so funny is the actor who played this creature, who played Kong here, with Godzilla, Haru Nakajima once again plays Godzilla in this film. And one funny thing about Kong, the suit, is that the back had to be sewn shut get in the sorry, the back had to be sewn shut. And there was one point when this suit caught on fire, and and everyone was worried about the actor because the guy couldn't get himself out of the suit very as easily as Nakajima could get out of the Godzilla suit. Now here you got the miniature set with the matte painting of mountains in the background, which works. I mean, it all blends well together. Kind of gives Faroe Island a very ominous kind of 1960s scary look to it. And what the funny thing is Kong roars, his mouth don't move. This happens throughout the whole movie, which is really odd. Like sometimes his mouth moves, and then sometimes it don't. It's like 90% of the time his mouth don't move when he roars, and then there's those few times where his mouth moves. So when he roars, so it's like, okay, that's interesting. But this suit doesn't look too bad. In all honesty, it really doesn't. It's just one issue that I will express later on here in this video, in this review. Now, the miniature sets, yeah, they actually do look good. Rocks look a little more realistic than buildings do, actually. Excuse me, that's the second time now, sorry. The rocks and the trees, they look, I mean, the buildings that do get destroyed in this movie, yes, they're really good. But the rocks and the trees here look a little more realistic. But hey, Toho's really good at doing this. They are so good at doing this, and it's just so funny. This is right when Kong does this intimidation, like "come at me, bro" kind of thing to the octopus, makes the octopus retreat, which is like, really. So yeah. The chest on this suit is the only thing that I have an issue with. Oh, and here we go, back to Godzilla. Now this is actually just like, remember the train attack scene from the first movie? Yeah. Well, they do the train attack scene remember that scene from the first movie? Well, they do the same thing in here, where Godzilla destroys a train. Now it's like, they tried to, I guess, bring stuff back from the first movie that made the movie amazing. So they did it in this movie, and Godzilla doesn't pick one up in his jaws. He just steps on the train and he kicks it all over. He doesn't kick it all over the place, but he just walks forward, and he just, every time he takes a step, the train just gets knocked off the track and starts flying all over the place. And then he also steps on a few wires also. So it's like, okay, some small pieces of effects work here. And once again, Godzilla, I mean, can you tell he's even looking forward or looking up? It just looks so odd. And at least in this movie, one thing is he has noticeable claws. Like, he had claws in the first film and in the first two movies, but the claws are really short. In this one, well, his claws weren't that short, but in this movie, his claws are really long. Like, he's got longer claws in this movie, and it's so weird that on his right arm, which when you're looking at this shot is the arm to the left, his pinky is always like, is down most of the time, and it's not up with the rest of the hand. I don't know, it's just these small little things you tend to notice. That's me moving around, sorry. It's just small things when you tend to notice. And the train attack scene, this goes on for about, I think, like 5 minutes. I think like 5 minutes of this movie. And it's just so funny, like and I just love the fact that in one other part of the special effects is editing also. Editing adds to the effects, and this movie has really good editing of people. It goes from people running onto buses or whatever, and then it goes back to Godzilla, and it's like, okay. And the footage blends well. It really does. Now, I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked, sorry. Now, there's nothing really much to say about this shot. I mean, he's walking through a miniature forest or whatever. Like, every time you see him, it's all minis. Like, typical Toho-style filmmaking. And the miniature forest he walks through looks really convincing, actually. It actually looks super convincing. And, yeah, there's nothing really much to say about this. I mean, him stepping on the wires, yeah, that actually looks really good. It actually looks like it looks convincing for the time and the budget. Yeah. Nothing really much to say here about this shot. Yeah, sorry about that, everybody. Just Yeah, and then here's another shot of, okay, doesn't Godzilla's mouth look wide? This is where you see his skin actually flex, like kind of like like a lizard. When this scene here is where the military actually he's not an idiot in this movie, but they say that he acts on pure instinct like a reptile, and they tried to say his brain's the size of a cherry, which I think is bull for an BS for an animal of this size. Like, come on, dude, his brain's bigger than that. But anyways, I'm not talking about plot, I'm talking about effects here, ladies and gentlemen. But this effect here, I really do like that when he crawls out of the pit that he falls into. You can see the skin flexing, and it moves and pinches just like a real lizard. When he comes out here and he roars, it's only in one shot, and it only lasts for like 2 seconds. Here we get to see more detail on the suit here. Now it's like the underside looks really smooth, and then the dorsal surface looks very rough and scaly. Now and then under here you got like a smooth, well, not really smooth, but very wrinkly underside, kind of like an elephant actually. And he's moving, and well, is it his mouth just looks so wide in this, but the effect of him falling into the pit, I don't know, the effects are just, they really get the point across. It's really convincing, this whole scene, and especially beforehand when they dump gasoline into the water and they use fire, they throw flares into the gasoline filled water, and when the fire comes up out of the water, it looks really good. It looks really cool, and they lure Godzilla into this pit, and he falls into the pit, and then they use explosives, and they think, oh, that should have killed him. Well, no, it didn't. Like, yes, he's very indestructible in this movie. Like, tanks shoot at him, they explode, they do everything they can to get rid of him, and they just don't work. Yeah, like I said, this is another one of those things where I ain't got much to say about it, really, because I don't know, it's just very, I don't know. I mean, I do love the effects in this movie, but I'm trying not to talk about, in the first two videos, it's like I didn't talk about plot so much, but it's like talking about I'm trying hard now. I don't know why it's so hard not to talk about parts of the plot in this, parts of the plot. Blech. Sorry, I'm like at a loss for words right now. That usually never happens. Anyways, and here we go. This is another great, here's where you get to see all of them, and again with the pinky. If you look closely at this shot, and this is where you get to hear his trademark roar, fully. And again, the suit looks amazing. Well, except for the Gorgo-ish looking neck. And this is like a nice reference to the first movie where they try electrical towers on him. And in the first movie, they said 300,000 volts. Well, in this movie, they say 1 million volts. And it actually works! Literally, Godzilla he literally slaps at one of the wires and it shocks him, and he just walks along the blockade here, and then it actually works in this movie. And this shot is another great piece of effects work, well, miniature work here. You have the little mini trees, the tower, everything in this movie is just pure, it's just really pure genius actually. It looks, the budget for these movies I've only covered the first 3 so far, but this movie just feels it. Remember how I said that Raids Again has a very made-for-TV feel to it? This one feels very theatrical, like it truly. And this was after Kong and Godzilla have their first battle, and I'm very sorry that I could not get a picture of the first fight, nor can I show any videos of it because of copyright. But the first fight between Kong and Godzilla is Kong throws rocks at Godzilla. Like the first fight, the effects in that are really good. Like Godzilla just keeps shooting fire at Kong and it makes him back up, and Even the suit, actually, I think that's where the suit got caught. Kong's suit got caught on fire, because there's a shot where the suit is smoking on the stomach area for a few seconds, and then you got Godzilla standing on top of a cliff and Kong down in this little valley, and he's throwing rocks at Godzilla. Like, the first fight was kind of like a test of wits, or a test of strength. It's just a strength to see who has the bigger advantage. And I think that was, and to me personally, I think that's what that fight scene was about, to see who can gain the advantage in a fight, Godzilla or King Kong. But the effects for that fight are really, like, it's really well done. They have explosives on the ground in front of Kong that make the fire come up. Like, it's just little things that they do to get the point across. Man, this suit just looks super. Everything about this movie was just really well. Oh, and here we're really well done. And here we have another really well done moment. This scene is actually kind of funny. The building that's about almost as tall as Kong to the left of him. All he does, he just punches that. He actually curls his hand up in a fist and he just punches out the side of the building. Now, the miniature Tokyo that gets walked through, and it's just so funny, like, Kong just walks through the blockade, and he even chews on a wire, which it just looks really weird that they say, like, oh, electricity makes him stronger, and he just chews on one of the wires, which looks very okay. I know this was an indication that this was supposed to be Frankenstein, but still. And then he grabs a train, and he does he does the typical King Kong thing where he kidnaps a young woman and carries her all over the place. Now for the train, the train thing is really well done. The miniature train, him picking it up, and the sound effects of the train getting torn apart, and the green screens when the actress was hanging off the side of the train, and you got Kong staring at her in the background, is like, the green screens are. They're actually better than Godzilla, actually, than two movies prior. That green screen looks a hell of a lot better, actually. It looks a lot more convincing, and it doesn't look so green screenish, even though it is. And then he just walks through Tokyo, and surprisingly, he destroys a lot of houses, and he just steps on them and everything. And Kong doesn't really destroy much in this movie. Like, you would think that whole section he's standing around would have been leveled, but nope. Sadly, not. And it's just so funny how Kong looks like he doesn't have a neck. he's got no neck, which is hilarious. But I'm sorry, like, I know I told myself that, it's like, I have a lot to say about this movie, because, like I said at the very beginning of this, how it's a huge improvement over Raids Again. Like, everything is done, even the monster battle, even the first one between Kong and Kong and Godzilla, were like, it looked like you would think that the fast pace of the monsters would have been like Raids Again, but no, it's really not. It's really well, the camera speed's actually really well. It's like Godzilla apparently lost weight after being frozen for 7 years. So, yeah, let's get on to the next shot here. That's gonna pop up here in a few seconds. Oh god, okay, this is one effects work that I really wanted to talk about. Well, Kong's eyes. Okay, I love the fact that Kong's eyelids were lifted up, probably animatronic-wise or some effect, but his eyes are just, they look so, oh my god, his eyes look so Halloween mask-esque. Oh my god, I'm not a big fan of his eyes. Like, his eyes are just so, oh my god, like, they have no expression at all. Oh man. Like, that's like the main con about the Kong suit is his eyes. I mean, the rest of his face, yeah, the rest of the face looks good, but just the eyes, those painted on eyes. It just looks super weird. It looks paper mache, actually. If you really want to compare his eyes to something, they look very paper mache, actually. So that's like one of the few. That's like the one thing I wanted to focus on. Is I was waiting for this shot to show up. Now this is when he destroys the diet building. Now, yeah, the diet building gets destroyed again, and I think it's actually the same section Godzilla walked through back in the first movie. And it's just so funny about Kong. I guess they were supposed to reference like Kong climbing the Empire State Building by climbing the diet building, which isn't that big of a climb, really. And then you have like the missiles blowing up above him, and the berry juice to make him pass out. That was from Faroe Island. I don't know. Well, I don't know. It's just when you look at Kong's face, it's like, oh man, they could have. I know this was 1962, but they could have done so much better, though. They could have done so much better. It looks really freaky. It just looks super weird in this movie. Like, it just looks so odd. Oh my god, his eyes. I know I'm like focusing on his eyes so much, but it's like, those eyes. They just look really, paper mache looking, and it just looks so fake. I mean, the rest of the movie looks really good, but those eyes, though. Oh my god. I'm just waiting for this screenshot to go away so I can talk about the rest of the good stuff. The only cons about the special effects is Kong's eyes is weird paper mache eyes and paper mache looking eyes, and here we go back to Godzilla. This is the final battle, and the final battle between Godzilla and Kong in this movie, it is one to always talk about, because it is, well, before I finish that, let me talk about finish what I said about the cons. Now, as I was saying a little bit ago, the only two cons about this movie is Kong's paper mache looking eyes, and the tanks from the very beginning of this movie when Godzilla destroys that army base. How I said the tanks were like a 50-50, where it's like sometimes they look like, real, they sometimes look like actual tanks, and other times they look too much like little remote control tanks. Oh, there's one other piece I forgot to mention, how Godzilla melts a tank with his atomic breath, and the effect for that when it catches on fire and you see the tank start melting, it's actually really good, and it sucks I couldn't get a picture of that. But back to this. Now, the final battle between Godzilla and Kong on Mount Fuji, the set that they fought on was absolutely gigantic. It was a huge set. Really huge set of Mount Fuji, and also when they roll down Mount Fuji into the forest around the mountain, around the volcano, and the battle is just insanely really well done. Like, they beat the crap out of each other in this. I mean, if you think like the fight between Godzilla and Anguirus from Raids Again was like they're just wailing on each other, more like they were biting and scratching on each other. No, this movie, they punch the crap out of each other in this movie. They throw rocks at each other, and Godzilla shoots his atomic breath at him, and Kong just runs at him again. Like, and then Kong for some reason has this fascination with grabbing Godzilla's tail and throwing him everywhere. So, yeah, this is like the first Godzilla fight where it is like you can watch that fight on YouTube like 3 times in a row and not get bored watching it. Because it is a superb monster battle. Well, this is only the 3rd movie here, but still, the monster battle between Godzilla and Kong, it goes on. I mean, it has some scenes with the people, but I'm not focusing on them. I mean, the whole entire thing of them rolling down Mount Fuji and kicking dirt and rocks at each other, and even trees at one point. It is super good. Like, the fight is 13 minutes of awesomeness. Like, seriously. 13 minutes of, oh my God, this movie is awesome. Look at, and here's his atomic breath right here, and it looks, I don't know, I ain't got nothing to say. I can't really say much about his Godzilla's atomic breath in this movie. Like, yeah, you can tell they scratched the film up, but it just looks so transparent. His atomic breath looks it's transparent, which is really weird. And right here, actually, is where he piles rocks on top of Kong, and he starts frying him, like he shoots atomic breath at the area around Kong to try to, like, roast him or something. But then, again, I honestly don't think I got a picture of this, but Kong gets back up and there's this lightning storm blows by them and it electrocutes Kong, but like I said, electricity makes him stronger, again with the Frankenstein thing. Kong grabs Godzilla by his tail, and every time he touches Godzilla, you see like some volts of electricity coming out of Kong's hands. Like every time he touches Godzilla, it's like you see these little electric shocks. And it's just so weird. Like, yeah, he was meant to be Frankenstein, but applying this to King Kong. Okay, you know what? I can't really say nothing about that because it's a nice little creative reimagining of the giant ape. And again, we see a nice close-up of the Godzilla suit. Well, this is actually one of the best close-ups in the movie. And here you notice Godzilla's skin. It's not regular lizard scales like one would think. The designers actually made his skin very irregular and bumpy like that to say, like, yeah, he's a giant reptile. But they also, when he was exposed to the atomic bomb blast, it was supposed to make him look disfigured when he was exposed to the radiation from the atomic bomb. So, yeah, the irregular skin detail and not so lizardy. I mean, if they were to go with the regular dragon-like lizard scales, he would have looked a little too cliche, actually. He would have looked like if Rhedosaurus stood up on his hind legs and got a different back design. Now, once again, there's one other, actually, before I talk about that, there's another crazy piece of effects work in this fight scene in the final battle that I really gotta mention. And once again, his backplates, they go down in 3 rows, but when you look at his backplates, they're just like placed all over the place. Like in this shot here, his backplates just look all over the place. And one piece of effects work I really need to mention. Something that I did not know for years, and I don't know if any of you guys knew that about this either. Okay. The actor who played Kong in this movie was named, okay, this is the last screenshot that I have. The actor who played King Kong in this movie was Soichi Solomon Hirose, who was this big, tough guy working at the studio. And the Art of Suit Acting feature on Raids Again said that Kong's fighting style in this movie looks like jujitsu. I don't know how it looks like jujitsu. Seriously, I did not see a single martial arts anything in this movie during this final fight. But they said that since Hirose was a martial arts fanatic. But there's a scene, and I can't believe I could not find a screenshot of this part. There's a scene where remember when Kong flips Godzilla over during this final battle? Well, for the longest time growing up, I thought that effect was done with wires. I thought they were done with wires to, lift Godzilla up. Well, apparently not. Apparently Hirose was strong enough to actually lift Godzilla over his shoulder and do that. Like, not only did he lift and throw the suit, but with Nakajima in the suit. Never could I have guessed that, I guess it's a judo throw over the shoulder. Like, literally, Kong actually did that. I thought that was done with wires or something. I didn't think that the actor was that tough. I didn't think he was that strong. To lift up the suit and Nakajima in it. Oh my god, I compared that one shot. I compare that to the giant octopus bit because to the using a real octopus as a monster. Like, it really adds to the realism. Those are the two biggest pros in this film. Is, okay, suit designs, they're good, especially Godzilla's. Using real life octopi, great. Actually flipping actor and suit over during the final battle without using any wires or nothing, amazing. Now, like I said, Kong's paper mache looking eyes and the tanks at the beginning of this movie, those are the only two cons I have to say about this movie. Well, Kong's chest is just, nah, you're okay. I guess that's fine. Those are the only two cons I have to say about this movie. Now, officially, King Kong vs. Godzilla, that movie gets a 9.5 out of 10 for me. Well, now here we end this with another shot of the Tyrannosaurus Rex from Jurassic World the game. This is T-Rex at level 40 for those new to playing the game. Now, anyways, well, those are my thoughts on the special effects of King Kong vs. Godzilla. Now, I will see you next week with the next Godzilla film in this long, expanding franchise. So, I will see you guys next week. Peace out, everybody!